Indeed, charity does by no means destroy prudence, and out of mere simplicity and silliness believe every word. Wisdom may dwell with love, and charity be cautious. But it is apt to believe well of all, to entertain a good opinion of them when there is no appearance to the contrary, nay, to believe well when there may be some dark appearances, if the evidence of ill be not clear. All charity is full of candor, apt to make the best of everything, and put on it the best face in appearance. It will judge well, and believe well, as far as it can with any reason, and will rather stretch its faith beyond appearances for the support of a kind opinion. But it will go into a bad one with the utmost reluctance, and fence against it as much as it fairly and honestly can.
Pumped. Profiting from the word. Next on So What.
Oh, hey man, did you get a haircut?
No, it actually grew reverse. It shrunk.
Are you serious?
No, Billy, I got a haircut, yeah.
Dorman.
And I'm Don Waite.
Welcome back to So What. We are continuing the never-ending saga of A.W. Pink's book, Profiting from the Word, in the final chapter, The Scriptures and Love. How do we know we're profiting from the Word when the Scriptures speak about love? And we're almost done with our exposition of the first few passages of 1 Corinthians 13, talking about love, brotherly love. And this week we're looking at love believes or love trusts all things. Okay? So what exactly does that mean? Does it mean then, as that video clip shows, we're to be really, really gullible people? Right. We're to be really naive and frankly stupid? No, we're not called to be stupid. We're not called to be naive. As the Matthew Henry, yeah. The Matthew Henry quote that Don read, charity, love. Right. Love is not stupid. Love does not forget prudence. Love does not forget common sense. Okay, so that's but what exactly does it mean in this context?
Well, we could have a really short podcast. I can just tell you, look, it means what it says. We need to believe the best. We need to believe all things. We need to trust one another, remembering that this context is in the church. Okay, this is not an expansive expression of love that's meant for all people, but a very specific set of instructions that Paul is giving to us in the church and how we relate to one another. But even still, again, it's not a blind believing in all things, meaning that if somebody has burned me, that I'm unwise about that, and I open myself up to being slapped in the face over and over and over again. There's a sense in which I have a willingness, Chris, yes, to be heard, and not to recompense, if you will, when I've been hurt, and said, but at the same time, awareness, right, of being hurt doesn't mean I stop loving. I need to continue to love and believe the best because I am called to do that very thing by the Apostle Paul.
Remember that church, as Paul understood it and experienced it, as the people in Corinth experienced it, is nothing like our experience of church today. Unless you're one of the very, very few who was really in a genuine community of believers and you practice and live out church as family, as we described and discussed in our series on the church and what really, really the church is. Because the church isn't what we here in the West experience, a place where you go on Sundays and Wednesday nights, where you hang out, sing some songs, write your check, raise your hands, greet people when they say, hey, greet the person next to you, and then go on your way. The people in Corinth, church in Paul's day, was really much, much different. Remember, church took the place of their families, and church became their family. Remember the obligation, as we described in our series on the church, what your obligation to your brothers and sisters was in that day, in that culture. In that day, in that culture, you, my brother, if you have a need, and I have it within my power to fill it, I fill it. Period. I don't ask questions. I don't have to go pray about it. I don't have to ask you, you have to write me a promissory note to pay me back. You need something and I have it, I give it. Period. A kidney, a mortgage, a car, whatever it is, if it's in my power to give, I give. Right? Period. Everybody functioned that way. Everybody functioned in a self-sacrificial, selfless way for the good of the community. Does that describe your church? Do you know people that well? Are you that intimately familiar with the people that you fellowship with, that you have that kind of relationship with, that you know what their needs are, that you could actually give of yourself in that way? Most of us don't have that experience. And so for many, this passage, honestly, I'm not really sure how it bears itself out every day.
Because here's the deal. I mean, you hit on something so vital, Chris, to this conversation. Because at the end of the day, Paul, in 1 Corinthians 13, is unpacking what the greatest of needs is, which is how we love one another. We need to be loved, right? Because the greatest commandment is to love God and to love others, right? The second commandment is like it to love my neighbor as myself. And our greatest need to do is to love others, and our greatest need to receive is to receive love from God and from others. And so, but here's the thing is, based on what you're saying, because that kind of relationship within the church, okay, is by and large foreign to our context here in the West, in the United States, it almost nullifies the need for these verses.
Kind of.
But if you have some relationships with brothers and sisters, even if it's not expansive in a larger body, even if you've got one or two people, right, that we know each other well enough for those kinds of dynamics to come into play. Because here's the thing. If I'm close enough to a person, if I actually am allowing myself to have a relationship, I'm opening myself up to be hurt. That's just the reality of it. You're not going to have a close relationship and not have pain and hurt be a part of that process at some point, because we're frail, right? So we don't have expectations of perfection in people that we love, right? Whether it's marital or with kids or with a best friend or even a group of maybe solid group of friends, it's going to happen. So you will have occasion then to have to dig in. What's going on in my heart? I don't love like this. So what does it mean for me to believe all things when somebody has failed me, when somebody has hurt me, when somebody has done something to compromise the relationship? What does it mean? How do I move forward? And that's what I believe Paul is addressing here. I'm not going to give up.
Yeah, and that's part of this. All things, some would say always, right? Believes always. It always gives someone, where it can, it gives the benefit of the doubt. Yeah. Where it can, it strives to believe the best about others. Why? Because the same Christ that's at work in you is at work in them. And your sanctification is not complete. Their sanctification is not complete. You're imperfect people striving towards the same goal, hopefully, the honor of Christ and the spread of his kingdom on earth, right? And the glory of his name, the spread of that great name. But we're all in different places on that process. And so if we truly trust, if we trust the God that is in work in everyone, then we can be more patient, and we can maybe not keep a record of wrongs, and maybe we can rejoice in the truth, and maybe we really, really can live this way and strive to live this out.
Right. It could very well be that, again, going back to that one other person, or maybe a couple other people you have, that you could dig in together. I'm just thinking about this, Chris. Get into 1 Corinthians 13 together and say, how do we begin to live like this with one another? Don't just presuppose that you get it, because you don't. This is something that's new to us after all these years, to really dig in and really understand what Paul is saying. It's like, get in and start looking. It's like, do we love each other this way? Do I love you this way? Do you love me this way? Let's be honest about that and start working toward that, because I believing all things, part of that is believing that we are committed to loving this way, that you are committed to that I'm committed to that we're all committed to this, even though we're frail and we're going to fail and we're going to mess up and it's going to be messy and everything else, but we're committed to loving the way Jesus calls us to love.
And think of the way Jesus loved.
There you go.
Okay? The people that Jesus knew the best, the people that he spent the most time with in the last years of his life, the people that he really committed himself to serve and to love and to model what love should look like. Every single one of those people failed him in his time of greatest need. Okay? They all did. They all fled. They all abandoned him. And when he asked for prayer, He's sweating drops of blood, and he's in complete agony.
And they're
Please pray for me. Please, I need you to pray for me. And they fall asleep.
yeah.
And in his time of greatest need, none of his friends were there for him. Does he hold that against them? Does he hammer them with it? Does he guilt trip them or manipulate or whatever? He loves. He embraces. He restores Peter. He restores Peter so lovingly, so gently, and so honestly.
Yeah.
He was rejected 3 times. Jesus questions him 3 times. Do you love me?
Right.
And so, have you been hurt? Have you been wronged? Okay. I think that's something that we've all experienced.
Right.
Does that mean, again, these were people that Jesus knew really, 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 really well. Okay.
Yeah.
He let them back into his life. We can't always do that. There are people that have hurt you. There are people that have hurt me that are not in my life anymore. Okay?
Right.
They're not. There are others, though, who have really wronged me, who are in my life today, and I have vibrant, healthy relationship with them. Okay? So it's not a formula. There's not a say, okay, follow these steps and everything will work out fine. Gosh, I wish that was true. Life isn't that way. There is no formula to follow. Everyone, God willing in Christ, is doing their best. They're trying with everything that is within them, that God is working within them, right? To will and to do. But not everyone does what they should.
Right.
And this is when we have to love like this. This is when we have to be compassionate and forgiving and believe that the God that is at work in you is also at work in them.
And it doesn't mean that we don't address wrongs. It doesn't mean that we don't have, that love doesn't dictate that we have hard conversations. Because Jesus even tells us how to deal with it when we've been offended or sinned against, and how if we see somebody in sin that we're going to reconcile it, right? And we're going to come back to them more than once if need be, and even get others involved. Like, there are ways to address those things within the context of love. It's not unloving to address sin in the church. In fact, Paul himself, in this very letter, again, deals with sin, grievous sin, and tells the church how to deal with it. But he also, likewise, is telling us how to love people well. So here's the thing. You can't separate them. Love means that we will address sin in the church. Love to God first and love to one another. Because we got to do what's best for each other. And sometimes that means doing hard things for people to be what? Ultimately reconciled to God. That's and reconciled within our own relationships too.
Because if that wasn't true, then it would have been unloving for Paul to confront Peter in Galatia. Right? It would have been a sin.
Publicly, by the way.
Publicly. He takes a pillar of the church and he confronts him publicly because of his sin. His sin was public.
There you go.
His sin was very public. It needed to be confronted publicly. Was that unloving? No. It was the most loving thing that could have been done under the circumstances. Can you imagine if that had not been done, and if the council in Jerusalem did not take place? We would have had a church for Jews, and we would have had a Christian church for Jews and a Christian church for everybody else. That's what would have happened. Okay? And Paul said, no. We are the people of God. There is one body of Christ.
Yep.
We are one. You can't separate us like that. And that was the most loving thing that could possibly have been done under those circumstances. So does love confront sin? Yes. Does love confront pain and mistake and error and whatever? Yes. But how does it do it? And what's its goal? What's its purpose? Is it to win an argument? Is it to be justified? Is it to look better than somebody else? Or is the ultimate objective reconciliation and the honor of Christ?
Right. And so therein, especially in conflict, Chris, so when these verses in 1 Corinthians 13 come into play in conflict, that's when I believe when Jesus talks about they will know you are Christians by your love, by the love we have for one another, that's when I believe it's on display in the greatest and most amazing way. Because it's easy for people to see love when people don't have conflict. Where it breaks down is when there is conflict. How do we then see people loving each other in the midst of it and working through it where love prevails? That's what's foreign to the world. And when people see that, they go, there's something different about you guys.
That's right. Wow. Paul's encouraging you to give your fellow believers that you really know well, give them the benefit of the doubt when you can. really, really strive to give them the benefit of the doubt. Strive to think the best of them. Strive to do that. Prayerfully seek reconciliation and strive to live this out, to really, really, really believe the best. Even when it's hard.
If you can start doing that, if we start doing that, then we know we're profiting from the Word.
Amen. Amen to that.
Even if I get punked.
Amen. Thank you for tuning in, my friends, and I'll talk to you next week.
We'll see you soon.